my name is Kara, and today I'm going to show you how to make a V-neck vest. This is a walkthrough for my Valerie Vest, which is a new pattern of mine, and I love the Valerie Vest. I wasn't super into sweater vests for a while, but ever since I made this really deep V, I'm really happy about them. So it's oversized, it has a deep V, it's ultra flattering. You can wear it in the summer, you can wear it in the fall. In the summer, I would just wear it on its own. In the fall, I would probably layer it over like a long sleeve tee. And let's get into it. This tutorial is a walkthrough for my Valerie Vest pattern, so you are going to need to buy the pattern, and you can buy it on my Etsy, my Ravelry, or my website. But if you use code YouTube, you can get 15% off the pattern. For materials, you are going to need yarn, and how much you need depends on what size you're making, so I'll detail more about that in the pattern itself. This is a bulky weight pattern, so I recommend getting a bulky weight yarn, although technically this is a worsted weight yarn, and I really like how it turned out. So you can also play around with the weight of the yarn and just make sure that you're matching gauge. And you're going to need 6.5 and 8mm circular needles. And they do need to be circular because you're going to be knitting in the round for some parts. For our first step, we are going to be casting on, and I'm using my 6.5mm needles here, and I'm going to be using a cable cast on because we don't need a stretchy edge. So cast on however many stitches you need. Once you've casted on the stitches you need, you're going to join in the round and begin 1 by 1 ribbing. So that's knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1. And just make sure that you place a marker at the beginning of the round so you can know when you finish the row. Now, if you're planning to use a different yarn for your ribbing from the rest of the body, I recommend doing this. So instead of doing 8 rows of 1 by 1 ribbing, you're actually going to do 7 rows in your 1 by 1 ribbing first. On your 8th row, you're going to switch to your body color, and you're going to do 1 more row of ribbing. And this will just make the transition between the ribbing and the body color smooth. Once you finish the ribbing, this is when you're going to work on the body. So switch to your 8mm needles and work in stockinette until you reach the desired length of your vest. If you want to add length, I recommend adding it here and just keep track of how many inches you've added. Once we've reached our desired length, we are now going to start shaping the front. So you're going to divide the stitches between the front and the back panel, and you're going to first start with the front panel. You're going to do some armhole shaping, so you're first going to knit 2, then SSK, slip slip knit 2 together, then knit until you have 4 stitches left in the row, and then knit 2 together, knit 2. And remember, you're only working on the stitches for your front panel. Once you finish your armhole shaping, you are now going to work on shaping the V-neck. So first you're going to work on the stitches for the front left panel. Left as in when you wear it. So you're going to knit until you have 4 stitches left in the front left panel. Then you're going to knit 2 together, knit 2. Then you're going to turn your work and just purl all the way across. And then you're going to repeat that until you have the desired number of stitches. Once you've decreased to the right number of stitches, you're going to leave the stitches for the front left panel on hold on a scrap piece of yarn or another set of needles, and you'll come back to these when you do 3 needle bind off. Reattach your yarn to the stitches for the front right panel and make sure that you're attaching towards the middle. So you're going to knit 2, SSK, then knit to the end of the row. Once you're done, turn your work and purl across the row, and you're going to repeat these 2 steps until you've decreased to the correct number of stitches. Now leave the stitches for the front right panel on hold, and again, you're going to come back to this for the 3 needle bind off. Reattach your stitches for the back and begin armhole shaping. And this is going to be super similar to how you did it for the front. You're just going to be decreasing by 2 stitches every other row. Once you finish your armhole shaping, you're just going to continue to add length to the back panel and do this until you reach about ½ an inch from the top. You'll now shape the back neckline. So knit the number of stitches you need for the shoulder, cast off the middle stitches, and knit the number of stitches you need for the shoulder. Turn your work and begin working on the back left shoulder. Once you've decreased to the right number of stitches, you are now going to use 3 needle bind off to seam together the left shoulder. And I actually recommend doing this before you do the right shoulder just because your yarn will still be attached to the back left shoulder. So this is how you do 3 needle bind off. You're going to place your work so that the right sides are facing one another. So you have the front panel and the back panel. And you are going to place the stitches for the front side on another set of needles. Once you've placed the stitches of both panels on needles, you're going to take a needle and insert into a stitch from the front panel and the back panel. And you're going to wrap your yarn and pull it through both stitches. And be careful here because you can drop a stitch very easily. And I actually dropped a stitch here and I had to fix it. So once I did that though, I repeated the step and I inserted my needle into a stitch from the front and a stitch from the back, wrapped my yarn and pulled it through both stitches. And then now you're going to do a cast off. So pull one stitch over the other and then repeat this step until you've done all the stitches of the front panel. Weave in all the ends for the left shoulder, and you can also do this at the end, but I recommend doing it as you go because it makes it seem like a much less daunting task. Then reattach your yarn to the back right shoulder and decrease to the correct number of stitches, and then repeat that step of using 3 needle bind off to seam together the shoulder. You've now finished the body of the vest, and now we're going to move on to the neckline. First, you're going to pick up the stitches and you're going to start at the back right shoulder and moving clockwise. For the front panels, I recommend picking up stitches in between the 2 edge stitches that we left for the front panels. And this will just make sure that the neckband is nice and clean. Once you reach the bottom of the V or the center of the front panel, you're going to pick up the stitch and you're also going to mark it with a interlocking stitch marker. And you can also use a scrap yarn here. Just make sure that you know that this is the center stitch. And this will be important later when we do the ribbing. Once you've picked up all the stitches, you are going to place a stitch marker and begin knitting in the round. And you're going to begin with a knit one, purl one. However, you actually want to make sure that the center stitch is going to be a knit stitch. So you can also start with a purl one, knit one. Just whatever you do, make sure that the center marked stitch is a knit stitch. For our first row of ribbing, we are going to continue to do ribbing. And we are going to do knit one, purl one, or purl one, knit one until we reach 1 stitch before the marked center stitch. Now we're going to do decreases to give us that lovely line down the middle of our V-neck ribbing. So once we reach the 1 stitch before the center stitch marker, we are going to insert our needle into the 2 stitches, including the center marked one, as if to knit, and pull them onto your right needle. Then we're going to knit the next stitch no matter what it is originally, and then we're going to pull the 2 slip stitches over that knit stitch. And now this is our new center mark stitch. And it doesn't matter what our next stitch is, just work it as it appears. And even if you have 3 knit stitches in a row, by the next row, it'll be corrected to knit one, purl one, knit one, purl one. Do 4 rows of ribbing for the neckline. And if you want a higher neckline, feel free to add more. Once you're done, cast off and pattern loosely. For our last step, we are just going to pick up the stitches for our arm ribbing. This part is optional, so if you like how your vest looks already, feel free to omit this part. But use your 6.5mm needles and pick up the stitches for the arm ribbing. Do 1 row of ribbing, and I only do 1 row, but if you want a thicker ribbing for your arms, feel free to add more. Then cast off loosely and pattern. And that's the entire Valerie vest. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to me or leave a comment. Hope you have a lovely rest of your day and happy knitting. See ya!